Here is the more advanced lecture on Maxon Cinema 4D Lite in Adobe After Effects. So if you've got your Cinema 4D file selected in the project panel and you hit Command E or Control E, that will open up Maxon Cinema 4D Lite with that file that you have linked in After Effects. Another thing I want to go over very quickly, if you go File, Merge Project, this is the same as importing or opening a project in After Effects. It's just called Merge in Cinema 4D Lite. And lastly, I'm going to say, if you change your resolution by clicking the gear icon for the render, then okay that, it will update your preview. So here's where I clicked right here, but your maximum render in Maxon Cinema 4D Lite will not be this size. I'm going to hit save and go back to After Effects, and it's updated. So by rendering in After Effects, you can work around this. So don't be intimidated if you get a pop-up message saying that it won't be able to render at this size using Maxon Cinema 4D Lite. Just render it out using After Effects instead. Now, in After Effects, when we want to start something new, we do a new pre-comp. In Maxon Cinema 4D, we'll make a new project, and we'll start working here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a custom letter logo, and then trim path animate it in Cinema 4D, but it's done in a different style. So I'm just going to choose the first letter of my name, and I'm just going to quickly rough this out. Now, when you're done with the path, hit the escape key a few times, okay? And then I can start my next path. I'm giving broad loops here for the effect I want. So I'm hitting escape a few times. I'm making a nice big flourishy letter, and then I hit escape a few times. That's my letter M. I'm then going to have a brush stroke going through these loops. Okay, I'm just doing this quick. I hit escape a few times, and then I'm going to label everything by hitting the enter key. Okay, I've named all of my pieces. I can then choose one of them, go into my points edit mode and the arm, and then start editing my letters to clean them up. You can move the path points as well as adjust your Bezier curve handles to smoothen it out. Just make sure you're on the point selector. You could use the arrows, or you could just click and drag, whatever you want to do, but the arrows will help you once you start designing in Z-Space. Hit the delete key if you've got unwanted path points to smoothen out your lines, because remember, the least amount of points you've got, the smoother your curves will be. And then just do the same, just click on the next spline that you made to edit it further. See, the less points you have, the smoother your curves will be. There we go, and then I'll just fix up the flourish real quick. And remember, when you're drawing with your spline tool, hit the escape key several times to exit out of your path once you are finished drawing it. Okay, this is good enough for now. So I'm done with the point mode editor. Remember, point mode editor is right over here. This would be to get back into editing an object. Remember, splines themselves do not render. If I click render, you see nothing. I click out. I'm going to need to add a Nurb, and I'm going to be using a sweep generator for my Nurb. So it's a Nurb sweep generator. And I'm going to drag each part into this. You want the down arrow. So here's my Nurb, and the spline is parented into it. And I'm also going to need to add a circle. The circle will be the profile of the extrusion. The circle is going to go above the flourish. And I'm going to adjust the width of it by holding on the arrow and clicking and dragging. So now that is extruded. And I'm going to call this sweep flourish. It's important to name not only your Nurb, but your spline so you know what it's extruding. Now I'm going to click on my spline, and in the object, I'm going to change it to get a smoother geometry here. I'm going to go display, garrote shading lines. And then if I zoom in here, you can see the geometry making this up. And you'll notice these lines are all different lengths, okay? I'm going to change that by going intermediate points, uniform. Now they're all the same length, okay? That's important. So before it was called an adaptive spline, now it's uniform. Now, if I increase the number of points, let's try about 15 or 20. I will just do 31 here. That's going to help with my rounding and make it smoother, okay? Oops, I accidentally went into 4-panel view. Click there to get out of it. And also, I started off in the perspective, but really you should start in the front view when you're drawing, okay? But I'm just going to continue in the perspective. The front is the better way to get a smoother shape and have everything line up rather than trying to work in a 3D view. But we're already here, and I'm going to keep pressing on ahead because ultimately I'm going to end up fixing this in the perspective view anyway. So the higher the number, the smoother we're going to get with our render, and it's going to just look better. Next, I'm going to go to my Nurb. I'm going to select that. Then I'm going to go to the object panel for my Nurb, and I'm going to twirl down the details menu. This is scaling over time, and this is rotation over time. I'm going to move this up so I can work a little bit larger. Scale this up, and I'm going to shrink that down because I don't need it so much. Okay, now watch what happens. Let me just, oops, click that again. If I drag this, it tapered that end, okay? If I drag here, it's going to start tapering the other end. To add more points, I'm going to hold down Command or Control so I can adjust the thickness where and when I want it to get thicker or thinner. It's all up to you as the designer. I'm going to hit delete to get rid of that. So it's about playing around with your graph to change how and when this goes from thick and thin, where you want that at over time. So you don't have to just taper the end. You could have certain parts get thicker where you want just by Command or Control clicking and adding more points. And if this is looking a little clunky or chunky, I can go back to my spline and just add more to the number there. I'm going to go back to my Nurb, and I'm going to close up the details to free up some space. I'm going to drag down here to give myself some space here. Now watch what happens. If I hold down Command while I drag this Nurb generator, I get a duplicate. And I'm going to rename it. Now watch, I've already got my settings for the thick and thin and the type of Nurb that's going to be extruding. I'm going to get this flourish, I'm going to delete it. And since I named this left, I'm going to drag left in below the circle. See, I had to fix my parenting. I had used that left arrow. So I need this above. Like that. Good. Now it's looking good. I could also adjust the thickness of it if I want, to have it thicker than the stroke, which I'm actually liking this a little bit better. Now I go into the details for that, and I can fine tune. See, now I'm having it get thinner there. Okay? That's what I want. So I'm going to twirl that down. And this is a matter of just using what you've already got. Like I can hold down Command or Control, drag that. I'm going to rename it, delete the spline. And just watch your parenting. Like if I have it here, it's going to go above the circle. If I do it there, the circle is now above it. And I can adjust my thick and thin for it by going to my Nurb and then opening up the details. Like such. I'm just doing this quick so you can get an idea of adjusting the thick and thin over time. And then lastly, I'm going to get my left again, hold down Command or Control, drag to create a new one, and I'll call this right. Delete the spline inside it, and drag that to extrude it so it's mirroring the thick and thin of the left arm. Okay, I'm going to hit save. Now you can see that parts of this are intersecting where I do not want them to. So I click on my spline, go to my point editor, and I can start moving these back and forth in Z space. See how now the stroke is going through it. And I hold down Alt while I'm clicking and dragging. So I'm still selected on my my left arm. It's just a matter of picking the spline and then adjusting where it is in Z space to get the look you want. So if I want to edit the middle, see, by moving that, now this is going around and this is going through. Like that, around and through. And I just fix those points where they need to be fixed. Just gotta make sure I'm on my flourish while I'm doing it. Or I could adjust my middle, if that's easier. And then the right arm, right here. Bring that forward. See, now this is passing through it properly. And you just think on what I want to have happen. I want this to be above, so I'm gonna send this behind it. Like that. It's a lot like designing like we've done in the past, but now we've got full control over the 3D. I'm gonna fix the flourish here. And then, let's see, we want this passing through, so I'm gonna bring it to the front. Or I could adjust my right sweep. It's whatever you can select faster and easier. See, now it's going behind it. And I just adjust my camera how I want it. And that's looking pretty decent. So I've got my thick and thins. I've got this extruded out into 3D space. Next, I am going to animate this. I also want to show you something real quick while we're here. I've got my middle spline selected. If I click right here on the green check mark, I can find my splines more quickly and easily. I just enable that green check mark again to go back into it. That would have been a faster way of doing this, but at least I remember to show it to you right now. So you pick your spline and you just click the check mark right here, and that'll show you where the points are more quickly and easily. Like right here, I can see this one is a little close right there. Change it, then turn it back on. That's the fast and easy way to edit your splines in Cinema 4D Lite. I'll hit save, and I'm going to pick my flourish first. I've got my Nurb selected, and I hit save. Now, when you're using a sweep Nurb generator, in the object, you have start growth and end growth. Watch what happens. If I animate this over time, it'll draw on in that direction. Or I could have it come in the opposite direction, okay? It's all about figuring what you want to do over time. First thing I want to do, come in, is my left arm. So I'm going to go to my sweep left, and I'm going to want it to come from the top down to, no, actually I'm going to want it to come from this end up and flourish out that way. So let's see which one that's going to be, start or end. That's going to be my end. So I'm going to move my playhead to where I want this to start, right there. I'm going to click the stopwatch. I'm going to move forward to whatever amount of time I want, and I'm going to hover over and click and drag, and I'm going to click this again. Remember, you have to click it a second time. I'm going to rewind. There's my draw on effect, okay? So right about here, let's pause. Remember, one thing's to have some logic to them. So this can start about here because it'll start intersecting with the point of that one. So yeah, I want it to come from that direction. So I'm going to click my start. I'm going to click the end growth for that spline. Move forward in time. Hover over, click and drag, and then animate it. And then I click the radio button again. So I'm just changing my animation order. That's coming in, and then before that finishes, that can come in. And then right about here, I'll have the right arm come in, and I'm going to want it to come in from the top. So I click my radio button. I've got my playhead where I want it to end. I click and drag, and I finish that out like such. And then I can say, right about here, I'm going to have my flourish start coming in. I'm just eyeballing this, so I click on my spline for the flourish, and I want it to go from left to right. I click my radio button. Oops, I clicked the wrong spline there. Then my right arm needs to start coming down at some point. Right there, I accidentally was on the Nurb for that. Animate that back on, click that, let's check our motion. Sorry about that. Okay, I just had the wrong thing selected. So now that this is something to pass through, I'm going to go to my flourish. I'm going to start animating it on. I'll click the radio button for it. I'll scrub through time. Now it's fully got something to pass through. And let's preview that back. Oh, I must not have clicked the radio button properly. I'll click the radio button. There's my keyframe. Now let's see what happens. Let me hit save. There we go. See, now this is getting ahead of the curve that I want it to pass through. So what I can do, I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go to my flourish. And if I want to make this animation longer, I can go here, type in a number, hit enter, and then I drag out the render bar. So the animation stays up longer. Like say I want it to be up a few seconds longer as a resting logo. You would just change it there. That's how you add time to it. Now my flourish, I was not happy with the time that it had come through. I want it to come through and end a little bit later. So what I do is I select my Nurb. Here is where my keyframes are because you see the red radio button. You could do this for anything you've keyframed in Cinema 4D Lite. I'm going to right click, choose animation, show track, and here's my timeline. Okay, so what this will do is I can scrub through. If I want this animation to be longer, I can just drag here. So I'm dragging that. See, the closer your keyframes are together, the faster the change will be. The further apart they are, the slower the change will be. See, now it has something to pass through. Okay, I'm happy with that. So that was just right click over whatever you've keyframed, go to animation, and then choose show track. And that'll pull up this keyframe editor. I clicked on end growth, and I chose easy ease. Or I could choose here and edit my keyframe that way. I'm going to rewind, hit the play button. There we go. Adjust my camera a little bit and hit save. Next, we're going to tackle making a cell shaded material similar to what you would see in a flat cartoon, where there's a highlight, a midtone, and a shadow. It's basically 3 tones. There's not a lot of detail. So I just click my render button, and you can see I'm getting a gradient tone to this. We're going to reduce that gradient tone, that detailing, so it's just going to be a midtone, a highlight, and a shadow. So I'm going to go into my materials right here. I'm clicking create right down here, materials, new standard material. And I'm going to double click to edit it. And I can name it right here. I'll call it cell shade. So I'm going to add this material to my splines and hit the render. That's where we're at so far. I'm going to double click to edit this, and I'm going to turn off color and reflectance. I'm going to turn on luminance, and this will give us a flat shaded look. Now I'm going to use lights in the scene to control how this is shaded. Then I'm going to twirl down my texture arrow right here, go to Effects, Lumis, right there. And here's my Lumis shader. I'm going to click once in the color swatch here, and we're going to make it look less shiny. We've got 3 specular tabs up here, and I'm going to click through each one and turn off the active for the specular. Then I'm going to click on the shader tab right here, and I'm going to make the color full white and click OK. For the illumination, I'm going to make that 100%. I'm going to click and drag up on the arrow and then dial it in perfectly by clicking those arrows. And this is the jumping off point for a flat toon shader, turning off the color and the reflectance and then giving that luma effect to it and turning off those specular actives. I'm going to click on luminance over here, and we see Lumis is already in the effects texture right here. I'm going to click one more time on my arrow and choose colorizer. I then click on the color swatch right here, and I'm going to condense my look by dragging the arrows together. Let me delete that middle one. I did not mean to create it. See how now I'm getting a much harsher look. You can dial it in as you want, but you want this harsher fall off. It's like even maybe there. See how I got less of a gradient? It's all up to you as the designer, but we're crushing this to make it more cell shaded. We want a higher contrast, less tonal range here. I'm going to select both of these knots by holding down Shift. And I clicked on the arrow next to gradient. And I'm going to choose step for my gradient right there. And now I readjust my black and white sliders. I can move them together or drag them that way. It's however I want to make my design look for this. There's less color, there's less tone. I'm going to click on the color black right here, and I'm going to color it. I'm going to make it a nice darker shade of blue here. And I can do something similar for the highlight. I'm just randomly picking colors here. I'm not going too wild with dialing in the details, but you're going to see where this is going. I'm actually going to make my highlight color less saturated. And I'm going to click in between these two and make it a mid-tone value of where those are at. And I can adjust how I want my look to be, however. That by dragging my sliders as I see fit. I'm going to blur it a little bit just to soften it. You don't have to do any of that, I'm just doing it. And I'm going to close my material editor and hit the render. Already we're getting a much more cartoony looking image with the shading. I'm going to add a light to the scene and fix where the highlights are hitting with this material. Because I don't want the highlight to be there. I want more to be like edge lit. I'm going to click once on the light icon and hold on it. And I'm going to add an infinite light to the scene. And then I'm going to rotate it with the rotate tool. And you can see the arrow pointing in the direction of where the light is coming from. So I'm going to move it about there, and then I'm going to use my move arrow and position this and hit render again. Now see the difference? How my highlights are being controlled by the light. I can go to my 4-panel view and dial in my look by selecting my light and then positioning it more. I'll go to my top view, zoom out a little bit, try and find my light. It's over here. And then I'll go back to here with my main camera, render it, and see we've got more of a cartoony look. We can adjust it however we want. I'll go back here, render it again, and there you go. And hit rewind. And there's our motion, and that's what the rendered material will look like with the limited tones and the more of a cell shaded look. I'm going to save my file. Now I'm going to show you the render one more time. I'm going to select my light, go to my attributes manager down here, click on general, which I'm already there, then shadow right down here. And I'm going to choose ray traced hard. So this will give me harder shadows and more cartoony looking. I'm going to hit save and render, and now you can see the difference with the shading. It's far better looking and it has more of that toon style look to it. I'm going to hit save. Next, I'm going to cover the Mograph. This is more advanced stuff, like we're handling changing around our lighting and getting different textures, and you learned about doing an animated trim path similar to After Effects by using the end growth of your Nurb. I'm going to create a new scene, new project. You can use a bunch of splines or objects or primitives. I'm going to do some capsules. And remember, if you hold down Command while you drag, you get more than one. And then I'll put in some pyramids. I'm holding down Command to get a couple more. And then 2 platonics. I'll add a material to this. And I'm going to put this on, hold down Command and make several of them, just different colors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm going to quickly colorize these. Now I'm just going to drag each one onto one of these to randomly colorize it. So I have multiple shapes all together on the same 0 point in Z space. I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to use Mograph to scatter these objects randomly. I'm going to go Mograph, Fracture, using a straight mode. I'm going to place all these inside it. Now they're parented inside it. Then I'm going to add an effector of random. And already you see the shapes spreading out. And I just parented that into that. I'm going to click on my Effector tab. I'm going to increase the strength, and you could already see them start to spread out randomly. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, move my camera. Now I'm going to go to the parameter, and I can spread these out even more. I'll zoom out a little bit. I can also click on rotation and add some rotation to these in the randomness of it, like such. And I'm going to click back on my effector, go to my Effector tab, and I'm going to change random to noise. Remember, noise and turbulence have built-in animation to them. You can see when I move my playhead, this is already starting to move about. Now I left off one important step. In my Effector tab, I have to click on Indexed, so this applies to each one individually. So you see how they clump together when I don't have that? I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to lower my strength. And there we go. We have some random motion happening based off of this effector. I had to have my shapes parented inside the fracture, and the fracture parented inside my effector. And then when I had my effector selected, I had to index this for each shape to be treated individually. And that's all from the built-in Mograph up here. I'm going to save this and create a new scene. I'm going to add some text. And remember, it's a spline. And when you're dealing with splines, you have to extrude them. I've got it selected here. If I hold down Alt or Option while I extrude it, it will automatically parent to that. I can change the depth of my extrusion by hover clicking over there. And next, I'm going to go Mograph Fracture and drag this into the fracture so that it's parented to it. And I'm going to change my mode to Explode Segments and Connect. And this will start to treat each letter individually when we want to animate them with the Mograph. And we need to add an effector to this to get it to work. And this time we're going to go Mograph Effector Plane. And I'm going to drag this inside the plane effector. I'm going to move my camera a little bit more. We see nothing's happening yet. And we now have the Effector tab here in our Attributes Manager. And you can see as I adjust the strength, something's already happening here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have them come up using some keyframing. I'm going to keyframe here and here with my playhead where I want it, and that rotation I had, I'm going to click those. Then I'm going to move to about here, and I'm going to bring them onto the scene where I want them to resolve. So I'm going to move my playhead, and then I'm going to bring them onto the scene where I want them to resolve. And then click my radio buttons again to accept that change. So you see them moving individually over time. Let me adjust my camera. And I can go to this first keyframe and move them further off the scene. Just like such. And that is just like the text animator in After Effects. I had to have my spline extruded. That's parented there. This is the parent, that's the child. I then had to fracture the type using the Explode Segments and Connect from the object. So that's parented inside there. Then I added the effector of plane to the type. And it's all parented inside it. And you could adjust your settings more to fine-tune the strength of your animation, but I'm just showing you how you can get some interesting motion and animation with these simple Mograph features built in to Cinema 4D.